All right, welcome everyone. Another episode here, Outlier Firefighters podcast, or Talkin Shop. I should know my own branding by now. You'd think I'd be able to pronounce things, but I'm here with Chief John Cokefair of the Antioch Fire Department. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of awesome stuff tonight, but we'll kind of get things kicked off, and I'm going to go to you, Chief. Just want to give a little intro about who you are, your first exposure to the fire service, how you got into this job.
God, how'd I get into this job? It's a long story. Way back when, in 1965, I was introduced to the fire service. My grandparents started up a rescue squad in a town called Cape Breton, New Jersey. And that was back, I think it was in the 50s, one of the first ones in the area. And I remember seeing pictures and them taking off and doing stuff. When I was younger in the 60s, they'd go off and help their community. Kind of what the whole thing is based about is helping your community. That's how.
Oh no, Chief, I lost you.
Fast forward out of that, I had a friend of my dad's. What's that?
I lost you for a second.
You're breaking up.
I think.
Oh. Yeah, you were chopping up.
For a half hour, we were fine in the green room.
Yeah. And then all
of a sudden, Facebook doesn't want to hear what we have to say, I guess.
Yeah. I'm being censored.
Yeah, already. So you said in New Jersey, rescue squad.
And, Cape Breton, they started a rescue squad, and we're taking care of their community. I had a friend of my dad's who was on the fire department in Point Pleasant, where we lived. And that was kind of like the first introductory to fire trucks. We'd go for wet downs, and if you're familiar with wet downs, they get a new fire truck. Everybody, it's a big party. They're all volunteer there. They'd sell mugs, pay $5 for your mug, and I remember my dad drinking all day, and I still have a lot of those mugs on my basement wall, sitting downstairs, which is pretty cool. Some cracked, some not. But every time a new truck came in, which wasn't often, there would be a big party. Thought that was pretty cool. Kind of let it lie there, and then went about my childhood. What kid, from starting out, doesn't want to be a fireman? They see the big trucks. You drive down your parade routes. Kids are all waving. They want to be you. We were all there. So that's kind of my introduction to the whole thing. As I grew up, in 1975, I was in a car crash with my parents and brother, and I was paralyzed from the chest down. And during that time, I remember the people coming to take me out of the car, take me to the hospital. But one guy, you'll be amazed, who really made a difference. I was put in a hospital room with a police officer from Bricktown, New Jersey. His name's Rich Harper. He befriended me. I was a 12-year-old kid, 11, 12 years old. And he befriended me. He was, I think, probably in his late 20s. And after he got out, and I don't remember what he was in for, but he kept coming back. He kept coming to visit. And there's something that really sits with me about helping people. You go and you take your tests and you say, what do you want to do? Why do you want to do this? I want to help people. Me, I want to be like him, going out of my way to help people that I didn't have to help. I was in the hospital, I think, for 4 months. Then I went home, and I was homebound as I went through certain therapies and things. And he'd leave on his dinner hour and come visit me. He was the next town over, and he'd spend his dinners with me, which was huge. So when you look about, here, the kind of person and why you want to get into public service, that's it. And you'll hear me, my one comment is the best cop is the dead cop. And that's that guy. And when I make that reference, that's that guy. I used that at a paramedic graduation as I was guest speaker, and everybody went, "What? What did he say? The best cop's a dead cop? What's he doing?" But it's that guy, and I point to that guy of who I want to be and how I want to treat people. So when you talk about treating those the way you want to be treated, that was it.
Wow.
We moved to Illinois in 1976. I came here with all my headgear and braces and everything else. And we got word, I think it was 1977. He was killed in the line of duty. He was directing traffic and got run over by a giant excavator. He left his pregnant wife and child. And then over the years, I kind of lost touch with his wife and kid. We'd write back and forth, but kind of went our own ways. But that's still, that story still resonates with me of, when you look at the kind of person you want to be or don't want to be, he was one of the ones you want to be like that. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So fast forward into Wakanda, 1988. I been doing a warehouse supervisor's job and got into, had a little taste, started looking. I saw some applications out for firefighters. I tested around in some of the consortiums. I actually made it pretty high on Evanston's list. I got married in 1986. My mother and wife were all over me. "You're not going to do this. You're going to die." And so I backed off. But when we moved into Island Lake, there was the opportunity for a part-time volunteer fireman. And that started all. And once you got the taste, once you got that little bit of training, it took off. And I went through their fire academy. I went to EMTB class, and I went through paramedic class, all within like a 2-year period. It's just one after the other. In doing so, I was recently, I had been recently married, and we had our first child, Ashley, our oldest. And so we had to go ahead and work through that. Studying for paramedic class, I'd sit there and read the book to her. She'd sit there and listen in her little bouncy chair, and all was good. And then once I got my paramedic license, like the rest of you, it's time to go find some full-time work. I went off and I took, it was harder then because a lot of people tested. You couldn't just test and you were in the top 10. About 600-700 of you, in smaller Lake County departments, there were 200 people, 100 to 200 people on the list. So you had to do really well. So then I started testing around with my paramedic, got an offer at the same time from Wakanda, who was my home department, and Grays Lake. And I had to make, when it rains, it pours. Which one do you pick? Which one do you think I picked? Well, yeah.
I know,
Grace
but
Lake. Yeah. I picked Grace Lake. One, I saw an opportunity for growth, but at the time, I wasn't really thinking about growth. At the time, I wanted to be the best paramedic I could be. I wanted to do some really good stuff. That was I didn't want to do it half-assed. I wanted to be really good at it. And I think over my 34, 35 years now, I think I got really good at it. I just gave up my paramedic license in April. I said enough was enough. I couldn't keep up with the CE and do some of my other responsibilities. It was just, pick and choose like everything in life.
Yeah.
So I went to Grays Lake. I had a great career, 24 years. 4 years into it, I got promoted to captain. How the hell that happened, I don't know. I think, limited choices, who knows? But all in all, I started my education and I started taking classes after class after class after class. I had limited college. I think I had about a year and a half of college under my belt when I went into the fire service, when I got married. So that just kind of sat and you just dabble in classes. And it wasn't until I was like 48 that I finally got my bachelor's degree. I made sure all my kids had theirs, and away we went. So I had a great career. After captain, I was promoted. They changed the criteria, or at least the classification. I was a battalion chief then. Stayed as battalion chief, worked on my education, had a great run of that. During that time, while my kids were in school, I got a call from Bob Johnson. He was the assistant chief, part-time assistant chief up in Antioch, who was a friend. We had a common interest of fire apparatus engineering and teaching that. And he said, hey, we're looking for people to drive. You want to come up? And you know the story of this. I said, sure, I'll come up and drive, but that's all I want to do. Here's my contract. It says right here, all I'm going to do is drive. And that's the standing joke up there. First day there, I pulled a structure fire, and me and TJ Ruth, it was one of his fires, first fires. And I'm like, hey, I'm only supposed to be driving, but we'll do what we have to do. And we took care of that. But stayed up there driving. That developed into a part-time deputy chief's job under John Nixon, Chief John Nixon. And then when he retired, somewhere in there, my deputy chief, Greg Formica, had just kind of slid a paper across the desk one day and said, you'd make just as much money retiring now as you would work. And I'm like, what? And then we did the math. I'm like, here's my 2 weeks notice and I'm out. So everybody thought I was dying at the time, but it was such a fast exodus. That led to where I am now. I've been chief in Antioch for 6 years. I just signed my third and final contract in May. So I'm on a 3-year deal. Most we can sign up for, and I'm working through that. They were good enough to give me the opportunity to see a lot of the projects that I've been working hard to do. We had passed a referendum. I've been part of, I think, 4 referendums, 5 referendum tries, 3 successful ones up in Antioch. So the last one more than doubled our budget, gave us the funding we need to start addressing building issues, vehicle issues, and pay. Pay was a big thing. Our paramedics were only making about $50,000 a year. That was up until last June. They're now over 72. So, we were able to give them significant increases to kind of catch up to the county average, but not quite. So we keep working on it.
Some things real quick. So Trevor, who you can throw some shots back at him. He goes, Cokefair able to see the screen with those eyes? He's just kidding. He clarified that, but he wanted to throw a little shot at you there. He says nothing but love, Chief. And then,
we have our setbacks and accidents in the fire service. Don't get me going on that.
No. Wilches is also saying congrats on your new deal, and congrats. Yeah, I mean,
thank you.
You said final, so I mean, final, like
that's it. Ready to go.
I mean, so my dad's in a very similar position. He's very close to being done, like actually done, and that's got to be a pretty. I mean, you got work to do. It's not like you can take a breath yet, but.
I'm working harder than I ever have. These last, you think that chief's job's easy and anybody could do it. No, you're working harder than, the best job is BC. So when you get to BC, stop. Any chief officer will tell you, stop at battalion chief because that's the best one. Anything after that, it's go.
Yeah. As much as it's you're 9 to 5, you're not. As much as you're.
No.
5 days a week, you're not. Yeah, I mean
24/7. Yeah. Even when I'm up, when I'm off.
Yeah.
You're not off. Spend a couple hours answering emails and tittering about.
I think that's one, and I'm gonna segue from some of our questions, but I think that's one of the biggest. I guess maybe not issue. Issue sounds like too strong a word, but I think when firefighters and administration don't connect, right? I think we fail to see the other side and what's really happening. And it can happen either mutually or one side's missing it from the other. I think a lot of – and again, I get a different lens because my dad is a fire chief. So I see – he talks to me about things that he probably wouldn't talk to any other firefighter about. So I get to see from a different lens, and you get to hear some of the things that, you guys go through. We go through some shit too on our side. It's not like we don't.
Yeah.
But, there's a lack of understanding between, and it creates a wedge, which is one of the bigger issues I think in our modern fire service.
And we talk about it all the time. It's a lack of appreciating somebody else's opinion.
Yes.
And whether it's firefighter to firefighter, firefighter to superior, superior to firefighter, you have to learn to appreciate somebody else's opinion. And you don't have to agree with it. You'll hear that time and time again. We don't have to agree, but we can agree to disagree and walk away. But that's one of the hardest things to do. You can say it, but it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I think a lot of us. I mean, we're type. Most of us are Type A personalities. Most of us are pretty rooted in our values and our ethics, and most of us don't want to step away from those. And even when something from someone else's opinion actually has merit, if you don't understand it in the moment, or I don't know, it's not your idea. Some people just want to lock in their, dig their heels in and not hear another side, and can't come to a mutual understanding, or like you said, agree to disagree, and that creates huge wedges, and that all that does is shunt growth, stop progress, all those bad things that we don't want, and the cycle continues if people
do that with the challenge of trying to climb the proverbial corporate ladder, the fire department ladder. And it's people digging in and not wanting to change. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work at all.
No, change is inevitable, right? And you just have to learn to adjust with things and grow.
And that's change. That's a great segue into kind of the environment we come from in Antioch is change all the time. It's one of the hardest things. You live through it. Turnover. We're a training ground. Every time you try to get your foothold, it's 3-year cycles. Every 3 years we flip, and there's a handful of people that stuck around and stuck with us. Whether, they were the bridesmaid, never the bride. They became older than 35, couldn't get the full-time gig in time. All good people, good medics, good firefighters. Some just chose to stay with us, but they lost my whole train of thought. They're sticking with us.
Yeah.
But they have to endure that turnover and change, where you do the same trainings all the time. There's very little time for self-improvement unless it's self-motivated.
Yeah.
Our focus is training and getting firefighters and EMTs and paramedics ready to move on to that next level.
Yeah.
To do this full time. And the 3 years, we take them in at 18. By the time they're 21, they have all their certs, their tests ready, and away they go. Now, back in 10, 15 years ago, when the lists were bigger, more people wanted to do this job. You had some time, a little extra time with them. Now, 21, if they don't have something in their closet, they're going off to a full-time gig.
Yeah, I had 8. I mean, and then I was an explorer for almost 2. I had almost a decade of time to be developed by Antioch. I really did, and that, like you said, that doesn't happen, and that's not just exclusive to Antioch. Obviously, like there's a lot of more even just straight up volunteer departments, but the part-time model, those things, it's a difficult challenge. But and I remember I was a company officer when I worked there, and I remember, like you said, it was difficult to develop myself because you were so focused on constantly developing others. And I loved it. I really did. I loved training, so it wasn't like it bothered me. But looking back now, I wish I would have read more. I wish I would have gone to more seminars or things like that to kind of engage my brain outside.
You know what they call that? You know what they call that? Maturity.
Right? Truthfully.
Maturity, yeah. And the older you get, you see things a little bit different. And we try to help people along with that, but the invincible juvenile, child, young adult, whatever you want to classify it, they know better.
Well, and I just wasn't thinking about it because I was truly enjoying developing others, and
but you were developing yourself to get where you are today.
True, that's true.
But that's self-development, helping others. Like I said earlier, that's a big part of it. Giving part of yourself, paying it forward, is what you have to do. And those who don't, I think in the long run will be failures.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest challenges with again, a part-time volunteer or whatever you want to call fire department is you have to be in, if you're a leader, if you're someone that's in training or whatever, you have to be prepared mentally that's your focus. It's
Yeah.
And like you said, every 3-year cycles, you have to just recognize that and live in it and be happy about that and not let that part of it stress you out. It shouldn't.
And there's been people living it for 8 years now.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go again. We're going through a hiring process now. I think today they had the physical assessment part. So, but the good news is, I think they had 20 plus candidates, that they were going to get to evaluate. And you can't take all of them, but
That's pretty good.
That's good to have.
20s, you're not getting 20 people to show up for full-time places.
But you can't.
Right? I mean, it's...
Well, you have to have
Yeah.
certifications. We'll take you with nothing. We'll take you with EMS. We'll take you with just fire. If we're lucky enough, we'll find some folks with both.
Yeah.
Fire and EMS that are already cross-trained. Yeah, they'll move up, but we still have to feed that system. And still, we find a way. This past year, I think we had 7 in the fire academy and 5 in the EMT academy. And then next year, they'll flip. So you keep feeding those systems. Now we know some are going to go and move on to other things. But the greater good is what I look at. The greater good, feeding the fire service as a whole. It can't just be about Antioch. It's got to be about the fire service and making sure people get quality help.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same a pride that an instructor takes, right? I might not ever pull somebody out of a building. I might. I mean, I could go 30 years and never do that. But the people that I've trained and the things that I've learned and passed on to them, hopefully, if they do, I'm just as happy. I'm just as proud of that. And it's the same thing you're talking about, right? I mean, I look at my group, I guess, when with you guys, all of us have spread out all over. One of us went to Texas. There's someone in Juneau now, right?
Yeah, but you come into my office, you look, I got the map of the United States and pins all over it.
Yeah.
Louisiana, South Carolina, California, Texas, like you said. The latest one's going up to Ashland, Wisconsin, going up that way. So, that little part of Antioch is just spreading out, and something to be proud of. It's something everybody in our whole organization should be proud of, that they helped feed that greater good.
Absolutely. 100%. So we'll probably talk.
Who do you want trash talk? Let's get into that. Come on, let's get trash talk.
Dude, we got to try. Hey, hold on. We're being positive. That's a good thing. All right. We got to stick with it. So I'm going to go back because I want to cover some of these other things because
Sorry.
No. Off script is the way to go. I love it. I just try to stay on task. That's all. So how did you learn about culture, values, ethics of firefighters? Was that done in Grays Lake? Was that done prior to that? Where did you kind of pick up some of those values, those core values?
I think 100% in Wakanda. The 2 years I spent in Wakanda, those guys, they were a full-time department, a little more heavier full-time than what Grays Lake was. Grays Lake was more of a cutting tooth kind of place where I could bring some stuff in, but Wakanda for sure, and unfortunately, a lot of those guys that taught me have passed away, I still think there was one common fire at some point that everybody was exposed to. Chief Glade just recently passed away. Yeah. All these cancers that, very uncommon for one department that size to have something. I think if, some genealogy or line guy could go in and draw the lines, I think you'd find a common spot where everybody crossed. You
Yeah.
know, that because a lot of good people. I remember one guy, Scott Detto. You talk about culture, waking up in the middle of the night. He was a sleepwalker and a screamer. And he'd stand over the top of you and just start. Blah, blah, blah. This is your first time in the firehouse, and you get that shit.
Yeah, right. Oh, wait, there's other people here.
Yeah. But culture, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, what they expect was a little different than what you see now. You didn't think about sitting down first. You didn't, think about coming into the day room first. Made sure everything was washed, everything was clean, everything was squared away. And for some reason, I think we kind of lost that over time.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are chasing that, and you could listen to plenty of other fire service podcasts or articles that are being written. A lot of right now in the fire service, the bigger conversations are of loss of culture, loss of our ethics, loss of our values, and that shift has happened. And everyone's kind of trying to figure out when and where that happened and what was the catalyst behind it. Nobody's really kind of figured that out. And I would almost say we need to just pivot and we recognize that it's missing and do something about it, rather than try to blame it on something. Because it is, I grew up in it, and there are differences now, like you were saying, versus, I grew up.
Well, what they say, 100 years of tradition unimpeded by progress.
Yeah.
And I think that's saying everybody's like, oh, well, we need to change. We need to be more progressive. And, that I think took away from some of the tradition, some of the things you had to hang on to.
Yeah. So firefighters will always be firefighters. That shouldn't change, right? Again, honor,
you hope,
pride, right? Dedication to service, to others, sacrifice. Like those are all commonalities, or they should be for firefighters. That should be the starting point for those things. But outside of that, yeah, we've taken, I shouldn't say we, I came up in a fire service that already took on EMS, that already took on specialized rescue. You and went through all of that, like as the fire department was like, I don't know, but we got it.
Here you go, 9 days, boom, done.
Well, yeah, that too. That's a pretty incredible story too to share. And Chief Nixon's in the chat, but
whoa, hey,
yeah. So it's pretty cool to
hope
see
you're
him
feeling better.
Yeah, I hope you're feeling good, Chief. But when he was the chief, we had 13 days to take over an ambulance service.
It was 9 days.
Was it 9?
It was 9 days.
Oh, maybe. Yeah. I don't remember. It was 2013. That's why, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So 9 days. Think about that.
Days.
For those of you that aren't familiar with that story, Chief, maybe you could share a little bit of the insight of how that went. And
no, it was terrible.
Yeah. Well, either way, it's an incredible feat. But that just shows again.
Yeah, and we were led by Chief Nixon. That was a big deal for all of us. Chris Leonhardt, myself, Chief Nixon, tried to drive that, taking fully, well, it was an unfunded EMS service that was private, and turning the whole thing not only into a village fire department, or enveloping it into the village, but also the district. And that took 2 years. The first step was, the village standing up and firing this private ambulance service. And then that was it. The clock started ticking. And we were able to do a lot of stuff. A lot of favors were called in on a lot of levels, and we did it. The next year, the district fell and folded into the same program. And to this day, we still use all our own people to fill those positions. We haven't had to reach outside. You become part-time in Antioch, you become part-time in our Metro contract, and then you get folded into a full-time position once you're eligible.
Yeah.
So that's the long and the short of it. It's
a long story, but it's, yeah.
It was a lot of battles, a lot of procurement. We started with leased ambulances from Superior Ambulance.
I remember.
The little ambulances, and I picked those because they were different. They were different than the thing, and I wanted people to understand this is different. And then we moved into buying used ambulances from some of our neighboring departments. And now we're just starting to replace our newer ambulances, which is exciting. Of course, now it takes 2 years to get an ambulance. So.
2? Oh my God! I think they're up to 3 now. We just took delivery of one like 2 weeks ago, and everyone's like, "Have fun! This is the last one you're going to see for like 5 years." We're like, "Oh my God!"
Yeah, you got to order them now and stagger them.
That's crazy, the ripple effect. And I do want to talk apparatus because I know that that's a really fun topic to pick your brain about. But yeah, it's crazy. Like engines are 3. Ladder trucks are like 5 years now. Like it's insane.
Yeah.
Well, nobody's buying ladder trucks around us anymore, but
Yeah, 2027 is now the expected delivery date for any pumper.
gosh, it's insane.
So
That's just flipping everyone's budgets. And everyone's
doesn't
doing
really
backflips.
flip it, it just screws up your vehicle replacement plan. You had a plan, and for years it was, 9 months, ambulance was about 6, engine pumper was about 9 months, you could get one. And that was your cycle. Now, when you're talking 2 years, what does that do? You really got to step out and see. And the cost it's got to be 20% more, 25% more for stuff that we had, 2020.
Yeah, I remember when I left Antioch, that Quint was probably what, 750 or something like that.
Yeah, that was a safe number. We ended up paying about 780, I think.
I mean, now that's over $1 million probably. I mean, it's crazy how much that's inflated. But what are you going to do? I mean, you're going to show up with. We can get horses and buggies and buckets back again. Maybe that'll be.
Bucket Brigade, baby.
Yeah.
I got the hand pumper sitting in the museum. We can get that out.
The thing's still. 1918. I got to get my numbers right. I'm pretty sure it was
1913. I think it was from 1913.
So yeah, for those of you that aren't familiar, they have their original hand pumper, and it's pretty cool and it works. I was working there at the time of their 100-year anniversary, and they got that. I mean, that thing pumped like a champ. They got it back in service. I don't remember who serviced it, but somebody.
I don't know.
Somebody went through and basically it was like brand new. You also got 2 other historic. That Stoughton's got a really cool story, and if we got time, maybe we can chip on that. But
there's the 2023 and the 2032. The 2032 is still running. The 23 we're having a little trouble with. So if anybody in the internet land has, motor experience with the 2023 Stoughton, give me a ring.
There you go. You heard it. Wolches is saying, what do we got here? $433K for an ambulance. Just ordered one the past week. Oh my God.
Yeah. The two we ordered were 320. 320. We ordered those back in the beginning of the year, I think. The first one's supposed to come 2024, and then the next one 2025 in the spring. So, yeah, keep waiting. In the meantime, you run the wheels off them. We got 3 ambulances over 150,000 miles out of the 4 we have.
Well, yeah, what's your shortest transport by mileage? It's like 20
The
miles,
shortest? The average is about 26.
Yeah.
It's equidistant to St. Cat's and Condell, Advocate Condell, but time-wise and traffic, you can get to St. Cat's over the border a lot faster.
Yeah, I will say that totally threw me off when I changed apartments. I don't think we go more than 10 is like the absolute. Well, for your run of the mill, I mean, we go to a lot of other places, but for the most part, we're like 5 miles. Like
running the Good Shepherd.
Yeah. We blink and we're at the hospital. It's hilarious.
Yep.
But,
it's a totally different animal. You get to actually spend time, 30 minutes with your patient.
Yeah.
In the back of the ambulance.
I will say this: that was beneficial for me, and I'm pretty sure other people, because I was kind of an introvert. I mean, I had extroverted moments, I guess, but I didn't know how to talk to people, and that really made me have to talk to people. I remember when I would get like newer medics with me or newer EMTs, I would look at them while I was typing the report in the medic chair, and I would just go like this. Just to kind of hint them, like, hey, you need to talk to that person that's sitting there. And it was cool to see people develop. I had a similar story. I developed it from being in the back. Like, you just learn how to talk to people when you're in the ambulance that long.
And what a lot of people spend time texting now. There's not a lot of time talking.
Yeah.
So maybe you could text back and forth to your patient.
Yeah.
Hey, can I get your phone number? You're sitting in the captain's chair just texting them, sitting behind them.
So we kind of touched a little bit into recruitment, but I wanted to ask another follow-up question into that. So what are you doing right now? Again, if you're listening, we're looking through the lens of well, really everyone has trouble with recruitment, but again, if you heard earlier, we're talking about part-time. We're talking about kind of maybe in the volunteer world of recruitment. What are you guys doing? What are you finding successful? And that kind of stuff.
We're sticking to our game plan that everybody else is starting to jump onto. We'll take you at 18, where most departments won't. We take you part-time, where a lot of departments, we're getting away from part-time. We take you with nothing. We invest in our people, and that's the way it used to be. And they're not, when I say investing in our people, they're like everybody's people. The fire service as a whole, we're finding ourselves to do that. We're in the tech campus as much as we can, trying to get them in the high school, trying to get them. These are all things we've been doing. Firefighter.org, I'm one of the contacts. I've been for, I think, 6 years now, for firefighter.org. If, you go to that website, if you express interest, they'll shoot you to a local person around you. We do that. Ride-alongs. Kids are interested. We'll get calls from parents. Steve thinks he might want to do this, but he's not sure. He's getting ready to make some college decisions. And, what I tell everybody, and I told my own son, you get your college degree if you can, diversify it, because if something bad happens, and we all know where that went, what are you going to do now? We bring kids in, and just the exposure into the fire service, it's the best job, and I don't think anybody on this link, would argue it's the best job you can ever have, yet we continue to F it up, ourselves, time and time again.
Yeah, I mean, you get the itch if you show up, pretty much. Either you get it or you don't, right? Like
I said, I got that, back in 1988. As soon as you had a little taste of it, that was it.
That's it.
Everything else can go to hell, and this is all I want to focus on. And it's exciting to see. Now, you do get a handful of people that say, I think I want to give it a try. And it's kind of the weird part for me is, they'll give it a try and then just dump it. Nope, I don't want to do this anymore. Yeah. You gave it a try. We've had guys go through all 3 certifications, firefighter operations, EMTB, and paramedic. That's 3 years. And then just go, nah. I'm going to go in a different direction. And that's guys and gals. I say guys, but yeah, it's guys and gals. I think on our roster, we're seeing an increase in women coming on. I believe we have 16, if I'm not mistaken, now out of our 65, which is kind of good, I think. We give people the opportunity. You'll hear people bash me. I don't require CPAT. I think CPAT's unfair. I've gone out on a limb and talked about this in front of chiefs. When was the last time you walked up a set of stairs and couldn't touch a handrail? Or just couldn't catch your breath and make it through. Why is it timed? I think, if you can do something start to finish without taking a break, that says something. We do a modified combat challenge. They're pumping 150 feet of hose over the shoulder, up 3 floors. That's realistic. They can grab onto the rail up and down. They're doing the hand over the hand. They're dragging a 170-pound dummy. They're climbing ladders. They're doing realistic stuff. And if they can do that from start to beginning, you pass. The catch to that is you have to do it every year. You passed your CPAT. Do you have to do that every year?
No, we don't have to do anything like that.
No, and none of the fire service does. It makes no sense to me. You can sit back and get fat and lazy like us chiefs, and not do anything. But these, everybody has to do it year after year after year. And it's a self-physical assessment. If you did it in 8 minutes, I hope you did something to do it in 7 minutes the next year, or less than 8 minutes. That's what it should be designed to do. So I think we give people the opportunity to come into the fire service where if they couldn't pass their CPAT, we're giving them that chance. Our firefighters come in all shapes and sizes. There for a while, some of them were only like under 5 foot. It was like the Great American ride with the hand. If you can get underneath this, you can come in, and work. But they use leverage. You teach them to use leverage in different ways to leverage what they have to make it work.
Yeah.
A 6 foot, 200-pound guy is going to hump a hose a little bit different than, a 4 foot 120-pound person. It's just different.
Yeah.
You and I will hump a hose different. You use what you can do. So I think those opportunities, that's what I want to do, is give people the opportunity to at least try. If it's not for you, you can't do it, then you can at least say, I gave it my best shot and I can move on.
Absolutely. Hell yeah. I got an audience question here, and it's a pretty good one. So Trevor Stein here, he's asking, other than pushing for referendums, what's been your toughest challenge as fire chief?
That's a loaded question.
Is it? I don't.
Yeah. Pushing referendums was hard. It took a lot out of me. It took a lot out of my family. If anybody followed it, there were a lot of personal attacks on my family. And it takes a lot of wherewithal to have your family drug into that. I think one of the biggest challenges I'm seeing now is a board turnover, an administrative board turnover. Our board is almost flipped around in the last 3 years with all new people. And it's trying to get to know them and having them to get to know me and find common ground in the way to manage the fire department.
And just,
how's that for a political answer?
That was a great answer. Just for context too, so if people are unfamiliar, there's village municipalities and there's fire districts, right? And they're operated very differently. A village municipality would have a village manager or something of that nature that runs down. They spread all the money out to public works, to the schools, to whoever. Fire district is, that money comes in just for the fire department, but it's also operated by, 5 or 7 person board?
We have 5-person elected board. That was one of the referendums we did. Yeah. That we were successful in, is bringing it to from a 3-person appointed board to a 5-person elected board.
Yeah. And so there's challenges with both. There's benefits with both. There's negatives with both. But
I'll take district management over municipal management any day, because the money you have is your money. You're not sharing it with public works. You know what you have. It's more palatable to me.
Yeah, I'm with you all. I mean, not that I work for a fire district, but it's. But I'm sure that, there's pros and cons, whatever. But yeah,
no, there's not.
I would imagine. I'm trying to be nice.
There's only pros.
There's only pros, but
God help those poor municipal fire chiefs.
Yeah,
they're in the ring all the time, fighting and scrapping.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So we already kind of talked about it, but I'd love to touch again the importance of developing people. And I guess the context I want to give is, I remember working there. There was always an effort to push someone to the next level, whether they knew that they were ready for it or if they really totally weren't. But you saw some faith and or had some faith in those people to shove them into directions. And I wanted you to talk about it. Unwillingly sometimes.
Yeah, it is unwillingly.
Yeah.
How many times, whether it's, firefighter to fire apparatus engineer, I'm not ready to pump a fire, and here you are. Once you get there, boom, that's done. You get over that little hump, and then, I can't be a lieutenant. Well, what does a lieutenant actually do? We don't need people I could teach people to be fire savvy and give them classes on, understanding fire behavior. But how do you teach someone and define somebody who's patient with people, willing to learn, and can manage people? That's one of the hardest things to do. So we have to go ahead and edge them along a little bit to make sure. Lights came on.
Hey, look at that. Oh, my gosh.
I'm going to heaven now. I'm going to the light.
We're not.
I'm going to the light. Lisa must have felt I was too dark. So she turned
She
the
didn't
lights
say
on.
anything in the chat here, so I think
Yeah,
you're
Lisa
probably
was said,
good.
turn on the light, dumbass.
She did say you had a very PC and a good answer, so
Oh, that was nice. Where were we?
so we're talking about
Developing people.
yes,
So, we do push, and I do push. And, because of the environment Antioch lives in, we're constantly doing that. We had some turnover of lieutenants, and you all went to really good places, and have gone on to do some really good things. And now, we have new lieutenants in there, and we're trying to mentor up those. Our battalion chiefs are in a solid spot, but they're getting older. They've been there a while. When I came in, I talked about a 10-year plan. I'm 6.5 years into my 10-year plan, and shit, now what? So we have to start finding that next level, start filling in for our battalion chiefs, and backfilling that. We've had people leave for various reasons that we thought we had in a good spot. They chose not to fulfill, that mission and go on to other things. But the importance of constantly trying to push people, even right down to the EMT, I'm not ready to drive the ambulance. Yes, you are. What's the difference? I'm not ready to go into a fire. No, can't do that. Guy sitting on a roof. This is hot. I got to get off this roof. You'll be fine. You're constantly. I don't want to write somebody up. I have to go in the day room with them in 20 minutes, and now I have to write them up because they, gave the wrong medication. That's your job, man. Do it the best you can. I keep pointing, I'm a point A to point B person, and we all sit at point A, and point B should be giving that community the best possible care. Anybody who works for us now hears me preach this all the time. The community, giving that care and trying to better that care every time you go out the door, that's point B. And if you can get there, and how you get there, that's up, it's different for everybody. But everybody should be looking to that. And if we could keep our eye on that prize, all the crap that happens in the fire station would just wash away.
yeah. Are you a believer in set benchmarks or time for the next step or levels for people?
I believe in setting benchmarks, but it's a floating benchmark. A benchmark should be checking in. Hey, say, it's just like corrective action. You overslept 3 times, Alex. We can't have that happen again. We're going to check in 3 months to see, if you're following a better pattern. I need you to get to your class. You need to take basic company officer this year. There's a class in October. You're going to sign up. I'm going to check in. When I check in, maybe you had some catastrophic thing in your life. Something deterred you. Okay, that's acceptable. It can. Those benchmarks are there for check-in points, not to hold your feet to the fire. It's to nudge you, and we let you know, okay, we're watching. We're watching what you're doing. Our expectation is set for whatever that goal is. But it's not a do or die deadline. You're done. There's always something happening in somebody else's life. Be empathetic, be understanding of what's going on. And that happens every single day. Look at the people you work with. You don't know what's going on at home. You only know what they told you was going on at home. And if you don't have a good relationship with them, a verbal relationship, you're never going to know. And then your mind starts going, you're going to perceive your own things. So, that, again, take it back to when we first started talking today, understanding somebody else's position, right? And that's important. And that's what's going to help everybody move along a little smoother.
Do you feel? Do you guys have a formal personnel development plan type thing from your training, committee or group or training officer?
BC Taylor has our lieutenants going through kind of a structured evaluation, not evaluation, but a teaching program. They're all either enrolled or they're all enrolled or have taken basic company officer. That we did a little different because we didn't have the years of service. It was on a promise, and I think you made that promise to me too. Okay, I make you a lieutenant, you're going to these classes. You have to get this certification. Okay, we'll work with you through that, and that's what this is. Now with the rule changes through the state where they have the task books, that's kind of complicated things a little bit. But I think we've worked through that. And every time there's a change, we have to react to it. And then, you talk about problematic. There's lots of changes that always happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and as far as the state goes with those research,
Yeah.
those books, that's a mountain. That's a hour conversation to have.
Mhm.
I can't even imagine.
You want to get somebody who's, when you do that conversation, it might be a group chat of people who are in the middle of doing their task books, from CFO to the advanced company officer or the basic company officer. Boy, you start getting them to talk about it.
Yeah, I just did. I only. I'm not going to dump my laundry. I had to do company fire officer. I was pretty much done with. What was the old one? FO1.
Yeah.
I had to do company fire officer, and I just did it like last year. And that task book is good and bad. Your department can actually build a better task book than the state gives you, and the state doesn't care. So it's kind of one of those things that they don't really tell you that, and you can actually kind of make it flow with whatever people are already doing. Or Romeoville right now basically says, hey, you do your COFO, come here for a weekend, and you'll get everything checked off, and we'll do your whole task book. So there's little things like that are starting to come up.
But if you think about it, when you do that task book, all it is documentation of everything you've already done or are doing. You just have to find a way to articulate it in writing to put into your task book. That's all it is. And that's, a lot of people they see this, they think it's a monumental task to fill out all these questions, but you have to take little bites and chip at it.
Yeah.
And that's what we do, is we just encourage, our folks in that position to just take little bites, sit down, answer the question. You're doing it already.
Yeah,
You've
really.
already done, especially in their case, they've been company officers, 3 years, probably 2 years.
I actually think that there's some merit to, I guess it's an unpopular opinion maybe, but I think there's actually merit to sending them to company fire officer after they get promoted, from what I found. Now they've tried to change from FO1, really didn't prepare me to be an officer. It didn't give me any like streets, it didn't really prepare me for leadership. None of those things. It basically just kind of trained me to understand what OSFM's role in it is. And I really think...
Depends, and I'll argue that, Alex, it depends how it was presented to you.
Yeah.
Now it's a college class. It's part of a associate's degree. So it's really kind of melted down into that. I can tell you back in 1994, 95, when I took it, it was focused leadership.
Yeah.
It was all driven towards that, driven towards a higher level.
I think that there's value in finding a way to teach those leadership and that kind of stuff before you get promoted, and then promotion, going to that class or going to company fire officer, you have a lens now to look at all those things, right? So if you're already preparing someone to be a good person and to be able to manage people and supervise and be a leader, essentially, is really where I'm coming from. When you step into company fire officer, all those scenarios are simple. All those scenarios just click and they make sense. And you're, like you said, it's documentation. Really, I think that book benefits when you come back to your own organization, and then your organization structures it to be, all right, you learned all this stuff. This is how we do it, and this is how what you learned applies to our organization.
It's just an attestation of what you learned. That, plain and simple.
Absolutely. I got another question from the audience here. So Tim Leidig, Chief Leidig here. He's got.
I don't like him.
Yeah, you don't like. Well, he's got a question for you, sir. Too
I don't
bad.
like him. He's a mean guy. I want to talk about the speaker he had at the second day of the conference.
Oh my gosh. In a 10-year plan, what are your biggest challenges you see in the last 4 years of your plan? So
Completion.
Finishing it off.
Yeah, finishing it off. And I've, the culmination of my 10-year plan was to turn it over to a chief, he or she, to take us to the next level, to a traditional full-time department. That was the culmination, and that's where I see I've taken care of finances, I've taken care of all the building issues, the vehicles, our pay is close. Now we need somebody who's got an expertise in moving a part-time department into a full-time department. And you'll see there are challenges. Everybody go, oh, that's a no-brainer. You write a safer grant, you get some money, and you go. It's not that easy. It's a changing culture, and it's preparing people for that changing culture. And I think it's going to take a special person to do that. My conversations with the board was, 2 years, in 2 years, they got to start looking for that person, because that's the next step. Hopefully all my projects are done and all they have to do is focus on that transition. I see that chief being there a couple years. Once it's set, then, once they have that transition done, then you're going to see a chief that's going to come in and just manage a fire department that's, has everything covered, and they're just managing it, and hopefully leading it too.
Yeah, right. You're in kind of a position of
setup. You can always get better. So when you look at that 10-year, coming to the end of the 10-year plan, that's is trying to get everything done. Buildings moving slower, vehicles are moving slower, everything's moving slower than what I had anticipated. Now it's just getting us to that finish line, my finish line. Does that answer your question, Chief Leidig?
I think so. He also did say, I will get you some speakers, stand by. So I think he's got you covered there. So segueing from people and leadership and personnel and plans and all that other stuff, I kind of wanted to talk to you about apparatus. So context again, when I worked with you, you gave me an awesome opportunity to be part of the apparatus committee, and eventually I did chair that committee, and I got to learn a ton. And I know that that's been something that you've been involved in for I would imagine most of your career. I really don't know too much about. I know you did it in Grays Lake, but I kind of wanted a little more context on where you learned about it, and then how you've applied it over the course of your career.
I was given the opportunity to be part of the committee, similar to you, and that's you dig in. 1993, I think. I came in on the tail end of a pumper in Grays Lake that they bought in 1990. Just as I got on, it was delivered right as I came in, but it was a committee of 7, and each person had a say-so in the side of the vehicle, and it looked like it. It was... So, that wasn't much of a committee. I wanted to make a little bit of a difference in that, and then got involved. And it's just getting to know vendors, getting to know what the process is, understanding a timeline, understanding the legalities of what it is you're doing, and understanding your needs. And I think we walked through that. First, what do we need? Why do we need it? Do we need it? And then build from there. So, it's all about opportunity. Give somebody, a little bit of rope, and you guys took off, and what'd you come up with? A ladder truck and a pumper, I think, when you came out of it. Or pumper, I think you were gone when they finished
the pumper. Yeah.
But we stuck to those. We didn't buy the pumper right away, but we found a pumper that was pretty darn close. And now we're back at that with a pumper tender. Now, if you don't have the interest, like I had, we had probably 7, 8 people, maybe 6, I don't know, I don't recall, but we don't have that interest now.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, that's not their focus. Oh, you're going to get us a truck? Go get us a truck.
Yeah.
So that's...
I think people don't know what they don't know. Like, it's an interesting thing, and I thought that was going to be kind of my niche, and I've learned more. Like I'm still very into it, and I serve on the committee in Lake Zurich. It's not like I've gotten away from it, but training, I found my home a little bit more in training. But I didn't know what I didn't know when I got on that committee, and you can really do whatever you want for the most part in terms of building vehicles. And once you start to get into that rabbit hole, it's exciting. It's cool to see, like. The committee I serve on now, like you'll say things like, "We could just buy that. We can put those seats in there. What are you talking about? We can do that." Yeah, like it's just a vendor. Like you just got to go meet them, or you got to see somebody else's stuff. And I don't know if maybe people don't find interest in that because they don't realize like what it really gets to be. Like you can really nerd out and do some cool stuff.
Yep, and ownership, right? Yeah. Pride. When you talk about pride and ownership. That's right there. Hey, I built that, from ground up. Okay, I messed up. I put the hose bed 6 inches too high, but that's what we had to do, and you can justify that in your decision making process.
Yeah, I know.
So it's all pride and ownership, and down the road, 15 years from now, somebody can say Alex Tanner built this. What a piece of crap.
I never got to drive it, but I know we talked about that. We were joking that you should just let me drive around the station once, but
I offered it.
I should. I really should take.
You're an honorary member.
I know. I really
4 hours, and then when your boss finds out you're working in Antioch, you'll get canned.
Oh yeah, they don't. Well, I won't talk about our union. But,
yeah, you're probably watching on the podcast.
Our union doesn't care about that, right? Or they're actively fighting to let guys continue to have part-time stuff. So.
Well, that's good.
We held against that. So,
hold the line.
I think they only when COVID happened because they used that as an excuse. I think we did it for a couple months, and then enough people work part time and do contribute in other ways, and we're like, no, we're done with this, and we got it back. So
good.
But
all right, where are we at?
So we got That was the meat of like the extra stuff. I don't want to quite go into like the wrap up questions yet. So, quick second, if you have questions, because these have been some great audience questions, please throw them our way. But I would actually kind of like to dig into that a little bit. The part time firefighters working full time places, and kind of discuss that a little bit because it's very very much a hot topic, I guess, if you will, in our area specifically. And I don't know if it's like that in the rest of the country, but when you saw that there was a suggestion that they shouldn't do that, how much of your personnel did you lose?
What, back in 2000, I want to say 15, we probably lost 15 people that bailed out or had to bail out. Some were able to stick with it, but, over time. And two, one of the things was, it made it more palatable. Full-time salaries were going up. We were only paying, $13 an hour?
Yeah, I don't remember. But
and, 13 to right around $13 an hour. So where would you rather spend your time for $13 an hour? Would you want to stay at home with your family? You put a value on that. So I think that weighed heavy into it also, along with a little nudge of, we don't want you working in another department. They're going to kill you. You're going to get cancer in there. You're going to have a heart attack in there, which isn't the case. We follow all the same rules that everybody else does. We care about you same way your employers do. I like to think we care about them more in Antioch. So that's, when you talk about how that happened, I think it was a number of reasons. It just wasn't, the union coming down saying you can't work, you can't do that.
Yeah, well, and they only put it out as a suggestion too. It wasn't like they can't tell you, but then a lot of locals obviously then did.
It's different, depending on who was coming from where. No, you can't work.
And I've dipped into this water a little bit, and I'm thankful for a lot of things that being union firefighters given me in terms of my salary and those kinds of things. My wife doesn't have to work because of the what they fought for or whatever that we get to bargain over and all that fun stuff and the contracts and blah 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 blah. But then I did notice a shift in dedication and pride and those things when I moved over, which was, I don't know if that's just the time period that I'm working as a fireman, but like some of the things that people cry about and use the union for are like, that's not what this is supposed to be for, like getting out of training and just other dumb things. And there's times where I don't know, like I was telling you before, I really considered leaving the state, and that was kind of one of the reasons. Was I've watched unions, and I'm not anti-union, I'm definitely not, so I need to specify that, but I've watched unions protect people that really are garbage and shouldn't work, and then people that aren't garbage don't get the same support sometimes.
Right.
And it's difficult. It's an odd, I don't know.
And I'll go out on a limb and say, I wasn't a union person. The two recent injuries, my son-in-law, I have to say Waukegan's union brought the brotherhood back into perspective for me. They really did a yeoman's job standing up and covering him while he was down and out. My future daughter-in-law out of Evanston, that group of firefighters and that union are standing behind her as she struggles to work through my son Josh's injuries. I see them step up time and time again, and that's where for extended periods of time. That's covering, no questions asked. That's putting forth money to help a cause. That to me brought the brotherhood alive, because there for a while I was losing faith. You'd see some of the stuff like you talked about, some of this petty crap, that they're fighting over. This is what matters. That's what they're supposed to be there for, is taking care of each other. You had asked me about, what did I want? What's important to me? First, it's my family, my personal family, and taking care of them, and then taking care of the fire family. They're both intertwined. And it's good to see people stepping up and helping out where I couldn't do that. It was outside my realm.
Yeah.
Where I can tell you I want to step in so many times and just knock heads, but it's still do to this day.
Yeah.
But there's two unions that were fighting for the right cause. I don't know if they have their downfalls in other places, but to me, it doesn't matter. They're taking care of people who needed to be taken care of.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the benefits where unions are more used as a platform, as a vessel, if you will, to support people like that, right? The organization already exists where it's really easy to go, hey, brothers of local whatever, this guy needs help. Okay, we're all here, and it's already kind of pre-organized, I guess, in a way. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a strong union and you don't have a strong group of brothers and sisters, then that means nothing, right? So it's a tandem thing, and I'm not trying to again say that mine's not. There's a lot of very high quality, great people, and I do enjoy a lot of the guys that I'm with, and I have faith that they would do something like that, should something happen to me or my family. But there is a difference again from what I grew up with, being a kid in the fire service to now. It just doesn't feel quite the same. And losing your faith in the brotherhood, I feel that. I understand that. I think a lot of people feel that way. And it's great to hear that you got some of that back, that you saw people actually doing what they're supposed to do.
People stepping up, and again, at my department, we had Mike Hartzell just pass away from cancer. And the people who stepped up to take care of him and his family were just remarkable, and it's heartfelt, and that's good to see. And, and we use that. I don't like to say we use that as an opportunity, but we used it as that learning tool so people could understand what you're here for. You should be taking care of him. You should be stepping up for him or her. I say him, I was pointing at Mike, but, that has to be done. That's why you're here.
Yeah. I I knew a little, but I remember I got hit over the head with it when I was in the fire academy. Do you remember Eric and Norden and that?
Yep.
And we were supposed to go drill. We were in the fire academy, and I remember somebody came up behind us at Station 2 and was like, hey, this happened. You guys can still go to class if you want. And I right away I was like, no, we're not. Absolutely not. Like, we're going to be involved with whatever's going on today. Like, class can wait. It's okay. And that was the first time that I'd ever experienced it in that way. And like you said, it's not like you don't want to say it's an opportunity, because that makes it almost sound like you're taking something so tragic and making it positive. But that's also a good thing, I guess. It's just but it's
here's a concern, where whether it's injury or it's a death, people come together,
yeah,
and they start screaming the brotherhood. But then what happens over time? Time wanes, and I don't want to say out of sight, out of mind, but the concern isn't there. Well, it must be taken care of. It's getting taken care of. Those check-ins have to happen.
yeah.
As you go along. And sometimes it's a phone call, sometimes it's a note or a text, but those check-ins have to happen. Put your money where your mouth is. If you're in it for the brotherhood and sisterhood, check in on those who need it. Mental health in this, in not just the fire service, but the police, fire,
Yeah.
Just anybody in the hospitals, they're struggling out there and they need help, and you can't just say, oh, they'll be fine. You got to be aggressive. You have to force it.
Yeah, even just as simple as just, like you said, sometimes even just a text message is enough to let someone know that they're not alone. And those moments, what makes us special, right? So as much as it's horrible and hurtful to go through horrible tragedies and those things, like, it's what we're supposed to be when people step up and they get involved and they take care of people. Sorry. And it's almost, yeah, I know, right? Here, let me take a. I guess it's revitalizing in a weird way. So I joined the AFFI Honor Guard a couple years ago, and that experience really framed things and really opened my eyes again. And it's just those little reminders are as horrible as what happened. There's a thing you can take away from that.
Yep. And, even if they don't answer or the families don't answer, that's going back again to our beginning conversation of understanding somebody's position. Maybe they can't answer right away because we're in the technology world of, I want immediate answers. Yeah. I need immediate satisfaction. So if I text you, you better be texting me back, right away. That may not happen. It may take time. Don't get upset about that. Don't feel. Just know that you've done the right thing by checking in.
Yeah, absolutely. Best advice I got from one of my lieutenants was, if you're thinking about reaching out to someone, just do it. Shouldn't even be. We had one of my guys. His wife had a crazy medical thing, and I was like, hey, I'm thinking about reaching out to him, but like I'm not really that close with him. And he's like, what are you talking about? Text him, call him, whatever. Like, all right, yeah, that makes sense. Like, yeah, why would I not?
Yeah.
And, and obviously he didn't get back to me, but like you said, like, he did eventually.
Here's the olive branch. They can choose to take it or not, and you can't put yourself in their position. Maybe their hands are tied. And they can't.
Yeah, he was totally busy, and I wasn't expecting anything back, right? Because he was dealing with a lot. So, this is a rough question. I'm not gonna lie to you, and it's from Dan Frank here. He's asking, do you think a union would ever work in Antioch in an effective manner? Why or why not? That is a hard
one. Not really. A union can always be effective because what does a union do? Union, it's an organization of personnel that are trying to communicate to management their wants and needs. We actually went through this in Grays Lake when I was there. Why do we need a union? We had a very good working relationship with the chief. The line of communication, he'd sit and listen to what we were looking to do, open-minded. Um, the mindset was, what happens if that chief leaves? Well, then you have to start communication again with the new chief. Once that communication breaks down, whether it's management's fault or labor's fault, what does the union do? You can do that as a group of people just as strong, but you choose to get, the union label, and they think there's something earned from that. Well, you're also paying for that too. Yeah, you might get a little more backing, but I've seen it where the union is going to go, sorry, can't help you.
Yeah.
And
you're paying dues for what at that point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's about relationship. It really has nothing to do with the union. It's trying to maintain a positive relationship with labor and management. And as long as you can do that, that's great.
Yeah.
If you can't, then you look at your options and see what's best for you.
Yeah.
Hopefully that answered it.
I hope it did. That was me. Yeah.
I don't foresee it in my tenure, Dan. So just so you know.
Yeah. We'll just throw in a little gem here, and I just want to read through it. So it was unions are the legal mechanism to give employees a voice, regardless of union or non-union. It's labor and management working together in a professional and productive manner for the benefit of all parties. That falls on the shoulders of the people in the positions to affect change and unity. Pretty much echoing exactly what you just said.
Yeah, we had the same class, I think.
Yeah, I think you guys did.
Thanks,
said.
Mike.
Well said.
Thanks, Mike.
Chief Nixon says, well said as well. So we kind of touched on this a little bit, not quite in the exact words, but it was have you ever lost your passion for the fire service? And then obviously you are still. So what keeps you passionate? What got it back?
I don't know. I don't think I ever lost it. It wanes at times. Just like you as an employee, if your bosses don't recognize the work you did, or fail to recognize it, you kind of get a little disheartened. But you have to do some soul searching and say, you're not there for your boss. You're there for you. You're doing this for you and not for them. Why am I here? Why am I doing this? And like I said, it's that point B, trying to give a community the best possible service. Even if I don't live in it, but I have family members who do. I've been challenged on that. You don't live in this community. What the hell do you care about it? Because I have family and friends in this community. I have people in this community that deserve compassion and empathetic service, and high quality service. So, that kind of, getting into your own head. Yeah, you have peaks and flows. We all have bad days. But I think, my head's in a good place. I have a finish line that I want to go. And I'm confident I'll get there. So, I'm riding high now.
Good. Awesome.
Just riding high here at my house, but.
What's one routine that you have now that you wish you started younger?
One routine. I don't know.
So I guess maybe I'll help frame the question. So I never read books. I never read anything. I used to take pride that I didn't read a single book in high school, and now I started reading this last year, and it has totally opened my mind up and it made me a better person. And I wish I did it younger.
Yeah, not me.
Yeah.
It's funny. I just finished a book. I have not read a book, I think, in 4 years. And over the last 3 days, I just finished a book. Was it? It's sitting here. Fire and Murder. Fire and Murder by Dan Zachard. It's about some Rockford firefighters who saw a murder and the tale of events that led through. It kind of through the fire service. And you talk about police and fire, FBI all working together in the end. It was a nice book. It was given to me by Ted Beskow from Metro.
Yeah.
He just dropped it on my desk and said, "Here." Why he thought I'd want to read a book, I had no idea. Here I thought it was going to be a book on how to deal with people a little nicer. because sometimes I get a little edgy. But before that book was Our Lady of Angels.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Which was a good read. I read that on vacation one time. But really, routines. I like coming home. I like being with Lisa, my wife. I like playing with my grandkids to a point. They wear you out. I like, my daughters, my son, their significant others, all. That's my routine.
I'll take it.
Go to work, come home, try to get away.
Hey, there's no such thing as a wrong answer in this, so.
Oh, I could give you a really wrong answer.
Well, let me. So, who best personifies the American firefighter? This could be It's a totally open question, and people have interpreted it so many different ways.
When you threw that in, I look at it as who best. I'd say me. But I've taken bits and pieces of other people, and put it in. Everything I've done, from chiefs to firefighters, company officers. That being said, I also discarded, and I think this is more important, what I don't want to be. I see something in you I don't want to be. I have, you got John Nixon on here. I want to be like him when the fight's in the fight. That's what I learned from him. You dig your heels in, you fight like hell. And then there's, other chiefs in the area that have come out swinging against me, who I won't mention on your podcast because it's not worth mentioning. But they've tried to take me down, and I know I don't want to be that kind of person. I don't want to try to take anybody down. I want to try to build them up and give them all the tools they can to succeed. So yeah, me, I personify, and it may sound egotistical, but I'm made up of everybody. I'm paying it forward. I've taken the tools that they've given me, put it in my tool bag, and one day I'm going to use it.
No, what an awesome, interesting take, and I get it. I totally get what you're saying. It's not egotistical. No, I totally get what you're saying. You love those sting answers where everyone goes, wait, what? I love it every time.
What'd you say?
Wait, he said me? What? Triage the current state of the American Fire Service. So we're saying black, it's dead; red, dying; yellow, it's injured; and green, it's going strong.
Right now I see it as dying, red. But I think it's going to reset. We're going to hit rock bottom, and it's going to reset. Fire, EMS. I've been saying this. Jim Cook, who works with me, my deputy chief. I'll banter this around. Especially through COVID, when people couldn't work or, you saw things falling apart. We're going to get to the point where nobody's going to want to do this. And that's the way it was when the fire service started. They had nothing, and then a group of people got together and said, we need to protect our town. We just lost the whole Main Street. We have to do something and rally the troops. EMS. We can't have people dying on us. We have to find somebody to get them to the hospital, rally the troops, bring them together. And that's what's going to rekindle. It's going to burn completely down the whole fire service and EMS. And then there's going to be that spark. And they're going to go, well, this can't be. And you see a little bit of that with fire service leaders now saying, okay, maybe we do go back and we don't need any qualifications, and we start looking for good people and investing in good people. As that grows, you may come out of red into yellow, and maybe the more and more people do that, but there's still a lot of departments who are dead set against that.
Yeah.
And they'll just limp along.
All right.
How's that? That one was such a sparky one. Sorry.
Smart. Leidig says you're edgy, so.
Yeah, I am. He knows me well.
So I only got one left. So again, anyone throw something in there if you got a question, short, long, whatever you burning. I don't know, whatever you want to ask. But I'm going to throw this your way. What's the most important element to end your career as positively as it began? I've tried to rephrase this question a few times. What I'm saying is what gets you to the end. We all should enter this into the job, which again we've talked your story. Obviously, you were. What's the best, most important element you can have to get to the end and have it be like when you began?
Here's the cheesy part.
Cheesy.
I want to leave it better than it was when I came in.
There it is.
Right. And, as best as I could, I've gotten everybody home when they could go home. That's, there's some people who didn't make it home, in my control or not. But I was part of their lives and they were part of mine. And so, that takes its toll. It's trying to make a change. What little changes, I'll throw it out there, and you want the zinger, if I can get every fire department to start paying the company to test hose so nobody has to go through what my son has gone through. I've seen it. We've come close so many times. It hit home for me. And, that now becomes my stump. People have certain stumps. I'll talk to any chief. It's $5,000 for the most part, and you can pay for it in all different ways. Have your 2% fund, fund it, your foreign fire fund, have a bake sale. I don't give a shit, but it doesn't outweigh the huge costs. The other thing, is try to get some workers' comp reform. Workers' comp has gone back 10 years because of COVID. They're not paying the way they did. Well, actually, they're paying the way they did, and they're analyzing their cases the way they did, same way they did back in, in the early to late 2000s. We had a period of time that they got really good. I find, I'm constantly arguing with workers' comp to cover an employee. I look at Josh. I had the president, Bob Hughes. I had his ear at the last conference trying to get him to make change that, his treatment is unorthodox and not supported by a lot of medicines. It's hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And that's costly. But what's workers' comp goal? It's to get you whole and put you back to work. And they're not looking at the big picture. They're part of the fire service that are saying, think outside the box. But yet when it comes to that, when it comes to the employee, if you don't advocate for yourself as an employee, to your doctor, to workers' comp, they're going to stomp you. And that's a huge thing. So, what do I want to do? Yeah, I want to leave it better than it was. And how do I map that out, whether I get it done or not? And maybe I can carry that on even after I'm done. Anybody who's left the fire service knows you don't leave the fire service. You always have your hand in it until, they put you in the ground or burn you in the oven. That's the end. So, we keep pushing for that, doing the right thing, and taking care of our families. Yeah. And on that, sir.
Well, there's still one more, but I'm just kidding. No, Nick Leonard's got a question, but I don't, dude, Nick, you're going to follow that up with something? I'm just kidding. Yeah. And in context with Josh, him and I had talked on and off, and I've been kind of, I guess I haven't been a good friend and I haven't reached out in a little while, but I know he was going to come on and talk about his story and what he's gone through. And I mean, it's nothing short of incredible what not only the recovery and the things that he's been doing, what they've been doing for him. I'd never heard of anything like what he's going through, and I hopefully we can make it happen and share his story, and it's pretty incredible.
He's on a long road, and he is struggling, and we're not supposed to talk about it. Yeah. It's the whole thing's kind of been hushed.
No,
but it doesn't mean I can't stump for hose testing, and can carry on with taking care of it from another angle.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't repeat something, right? If you can stop it from happening, we have the power to do that. So, like you said, $5,000. Like we've got people, whatever. We
Yeah.
got people spending money on, yeah.
Whatever. But there's a way, there's a way you could do it, and it just has to be the will of the fireman.
Yeah. Well, we definitely have a lot of willpower, that's for sure. All right, Nick, last one. What will you miss most about the fire service and why? I guess he's got a two-part. And if you go back in time, what's the one piece of advice that you would give a probie?
All right, which one you want first?
Let's do what will you miss most.
What will I miss most? Probably going to work every day. You won't miss it until, the people, the exchange, the fun, the bantering, the excitement of going on a call, running 150 miles an hour, hitting the bridge in Lake Villa, not landing until, Grass Lake Road on re-entry. That's, it's just the adrenaline, and how do you stop that? When all is said and done, and then that's my career. Did I do everything I could do to affect change, and make it a better place and a safer place? Now, as far as, what would I tell a probie? Same thing I tell them all the time now. Listen, get involved in everything, anything you can. Don't let anybody tell you no. You can't do it. And be strong. Be strong, brave, empathetic, and compassionate.
All right.
You hear that, Nick? Okay, pay attention.
Well, all right. Well, Chief, thank you. I mean, awesome episode. I really appreciate
Thank you for
coming
having me on. I appreciate what you do here. I really, like we talked earlier, we gotta get you a big forum, get you up on the big screen, maybe Super Bowl. I don't know.
Yeah, Super
Well,
yeah.
No, you got a good platform. It's fun, and I think just a matter of getting the word out.
Well, I appreciate your support. It's
Well,
it's been a lot of fun.
and thank everybody for dialing in and listening to me rant.
Yeah. If you did miss any of that ranting, this goes up on Spotify pretty quickly, and then the videos always stay up on my website. I'm on Facebook. I might branch out to YouTube, but I'm one guy trying to manage all this crap. So I appreciate it. I know Chief appreciates it as well. Thank you. Have a nice night. I don't know how to wrap this up other than stay safe. And we'll see you on the next one. I think I'm back next week. I got Corley Moore. He's from Firehouse Vigilance, and he does a weekly scrap podcast, so that'll be a pretty cool one. And then my brother Nick Elkin, he's going to come on a little bit later. That'll be a fun one because him and I have been friends since we were
He's spicy.
Yeah, he's long time. Him and I have been buddies. So appreciate everything, and take care.
All right, thanks, Alex. Thanks, everybody.
Have a
Be
nice
safe.
night.